Hello, ladies and gentlemen, and welcome back to another edition of Civilization 6 Tutorials. And today, we're going to be covering more basics of gameplay. So I hope you're ready to learn, because class is in session. Now, for those of you who've not yet seen the original basics tutorial, I highly suggest that you follow the link in the description down below and go watch that episode first, as it covers a lot of introductory steps, and also this tutorial is continuing on from where that one left off. Also, a quick reminder, these basics tutorials are intended to help relatively new players get introduced to the game and take away the intimidation factor that often comes with tackling a new Civilization game. There may be some tidbits of advice that an intermediate player could take away from this basic series, but certainly advanced players playing at the highest difficulty levels are unlikely to find this video particularly informative. So with that said, let's begin. So the first topic I'd like to talk to you about today is diplomacy. Now, there are a lot of layers to how diplomacy works in Civilization 6, and I don't want to overwhelm you with buckets of information, but I do want to dive in and give you the cursory knowledge you need to understand what is happening on the surface. So up here in the right-hand corner, you can see that we've met two individuals, that is Victoria of England and Peter of Russia. And the first thing you'll notice is that there is a little friendly smile beside Victoria. So what I like to do is click on Victoria, and let's go take a look at what it is that's making her happy with us and what that means. So when you first click on her, you're going to get an overview screen talking about a number of things that you don't necessarily need to know right away. But we can understand that they do have a government that is chiefdom. Knowing which government they're in can be advantageous as you move along, but it's nothing that you need to worry about right now. You can also see that your relationship is friendly, as we indicated before, and you can also see that their relationships with others include Peter, whom she's already friendly with. So if she was at war with somebody, it would have a little war cross there, and you can always tell who they know and what their relationship is with them. All right. Now, one thing I do want to talk about very briefly is agendas. And you can see here that there's sun never sets. And what that is each civilization has a couple of different agendas that determines whether or not they're going to like you or not. And sun never sets is basically where England likes people who are already on the same continent as them, but does not like people who are on other continents. And that has an historical purpose, obviously, because England was a colonial nation who liked to colonize other people's lands on other continents. So if you have land on other continents that she wants, she's going to have a negative opinion towards you. But vice versa, if you were already on her land, she will have a positive opinion towards you. And you can see that by coming down here coming up here to the heart and seeing the breakdown of the relationship. And you can see that there's +2 for the original friendly meeting, and then +12 because Victoria is pleased that you share the same continent. If you were on a different continent, there would be a negative there. And this would actually be starting to go down towards the red, where she would not like you. And you can also see in here that there are a number of things you can do to raise your relationship with them, and a number of things that you can do that will lower the relationship. So you can offer them a favorable trade. So for instance, you could trade them something that they would be willing to pay 5 gold a turn for, but only charge them 2, or even just give it to them for free. And then that will give them a plus advantage as well. Establishing a trade route with that empire, with that nation, whether it's the English Empire or whatever. Granting open borders increases relationships. Sending a delegation, which is down here. So if you ever are in a game where you want to make sure that everyone likes you, you don't want to have to worry about war and building a big army and getting attacked. As soon as you meet everybody, you can send them a delegation immediately, and that will give them a positive opinion. And so if you mix that with a friendly meeting, then there's a good chance that you'll immediately start to work towards a friendly relationship, and then you can declare friendship and hopefully be friends with everybody. And you can then just play a peaceful game where you go for a science or culture victory or even religion or something like that. So with that said, let's also take a look at making a trade deal. Okay, so we've already talked about relationships and friendliness, and keep in mind as well, the higher difficulty you play on will determine what this meeting is. So if you're playing on like deity difficulty, which is the highest difficulty level, this is almost always going to be at least -3 or worse. So oftentimes you have to send them a delegation just to keep their relationship kind of even, and then you'll have to hope to understand what their agenda is, and hopefully you can satisfy it. Sometimes you're going to have absolutely no control. For instance, you don't have control over whether or not she's going to like you in this one because you're either on her continent or you're not. So, again, like I said, let's jump down to make a deal and see what's going on in there. So in here, you're going to see that there's basically a number of things that you can trade. There's strategic resources, luxury resources, and you have the option of being able to trade those away. There's also the ability to trade when you have the technology open borders, which of course will give them, if we grant them open borders to our lands, that will increase the relationship level with them. So that's another thing you can do. We don't have the technology to trade it away quite yet, but that will be an option down the road. There's luxuries, which are important, and we'll get to that a little bit later in this episode. But you can see here, if you were to click on this luxury, you can ask them what they would be willing to give them for you. And they're saying, okay, we'll give you 4 gold per turn and then a couple gold right now. That's not bad. Generally speaking, 5 or 6 gold a turn is a little bit better. You want to see that for luxury. Sometimes later in the game, you might get 8 or 9 or 10 or more gold per turn for luxury, depending on the civilization and how badly they need it. For now, they don't currently need a luxury that badly, obviously, so they're only willing to pay 4. But we don't want to do that. We don't want to do this at all because we've only got 1 copy of this fur, because you can see that as indicated by the 1 right here. If this was a 2 or more, we would want to sell that because the first copy of a luxury is valuable to you. All other copies are superfluous and have no impact on your civilization, so there makes no point to keep them. So you should definitely want to trade them away as soon as you get extra copies of any luxury resource. Okay. Now, like I said, open borders, you often can trade open borders back and forth, and they'll sometimes pay you pretty good for it as well. So you can, even if you don't need the diplomatic relation, selling them open borders can often be a way to just make a few gold here and there, which is certainly not a bad thing. So there you go. That's the general idea behind friendships and what you can get with delegations of war. Sending delegations versus delegations of war, and how you make a deal as well. Now, the next thing I'd like to discuss is the military side of the game. Now, that isn't to say I want to have an in-depth conversation about how to win a domination game, but rather identify both threats and opportunities for your civilization when it comes to combat. And this game happens to present us with a couple of very interesting talking points that we can use to illustrate both sides of that coin. So let's start by taking a quick look at Victoria here. Now, obviously, at this point, we're declared friends, so we don't need to worry about combat. But let's pretend that we are actually not on the same continent as her. Let's pretend that this is actually 2 different continents, and she doesn't like us, and she's got a big frowny face on here. And we can also see that she has 80 military strength, which is more than 3 times the strength that we have. So she likely has 3 or 4 warriors, maybe some slingers. She might even have some heavy chariots in there. Like, she's going to have a lot of military units over there. So it's unlikely that we would win if she were to come and attack us. So let's, for instance, say that she put down a city right here, and she's starting to threaten our borders. She's getting really close to us, and she's got a frowny face on us. And you're thinking, oh man, she might denounce us soon. Maybe she'll declare us as war. This is not good. We're seeing units all over the place. When you start to see that, when you see a frowny face and somebody with a military strength higher than yours, you need to pivot quite quickly to starting to produce some ranged units. Get some slingers built, start working towards archery, upgrade those slingers into archers, and put them in positions that if you were to be attacked, that you would be able to defend yourself. And you want to at least have enough, like for instance, say 3 archers in this case, so that if they were to start bringing units up this way, you could position them in places behind the cities or in the cities, behind rivers and stuff like that, where they won't take hits from them, but archers are so well positioned that they can take shots at the enemy, depleting their strength while not taking hits themselves. If you can keep them in positions like that so that when they're trying to hit your cities and take your cities down, you're also constantly taking them down with your shots, and you can focus on one guy, take him down, the next turn you take another guy down. The archers are all about the ability to withstand attacks from others. So if you see a threat coming at you, like the one that I posited here, then you should definitely, as much as you may not want to pivot from what you're doing, make sure you've got the defense, or else, 5-10 turns from now, you'll be complaining to yourself, why the heck didn't I do that? Find the opportunity to pivot out, get a couple slingers built, make sure you've got the money to upgrade them to archers, make sure that you have the ability. You don't have to have the full defense immediately, right? You don't have to get 5 archers and 3 warriors and line them up and just hope that they don't attack you, because at that point, you're going to have as much military strength as she does, and she's not going to want to attack you anyway. But the AI will recognize if they have a an advantage on you militarily. So getting a couple more units could make them not want to. And even if they did come at you, because you've got a couple archers there, you can at least kill a unit or two while you pivot again to getting even more units out of your cities. Now let's go to the other side of that conversation. And let's talk about opportunities. And in this case, we happen to have a really good opportunity where we could actually take advantage of the weakness of one of our opponents. In this case, we can see that Peter has just 21 military strength. And so you can see that we have 25 with just a warrior and a scout. And we can see that they have a scout, which means they have a unit even less strong than a warrior. So they've at some point lost their warrior, probably to barbarians, and they probably have a slinger roaming around down here, which is not very strong. So what we could do is, as we take a look at these cities, we can see there's quite strong tiles. There's a 2-3 tile, a 2-2 tile. We know those are very good. Over here we have a tile with 4 gold on it. That's going to be probably a luxury. Yeah, that's truffles. So that's truffles on a marsh. So that's a bunch of gold right there. Really good city overall. And also up here, this city's got tons of really strong tiles. 2-2s, 1-3s. There's another luxury up here. There's lots of nice chops out here, like things to harvest later on. These are a couple of really good solid cities. And you can see a couple of things. Obviously, we've seen that they've got low military strength. We can also see that the strength of the city itself, the garrison defense is only 10, which means we could actually knock that down very, very quickly because there's no, if there was a warrior in there, it would immediately be 20 at minimum. So we know that we could definitely have an opportunity to take these guys down. So then it's like, okay, what do we need to do that? Well, I would say that we definitely want to get at least a couple more warriors and maybe an archer or two in order to go down there and make sure that we can really smack them good. So what I would say to do is, we started the library here, but I'm actually going to pivot out of that, and I'm going to say, okay, let's find something else to do. So I'm actually going to try and make a slinger here real quick. Okay? And now, this is a little bit of a more advanced micro thing, not super advanced, but something you may not think of at the beginning of the game when you're first starting to play. In one turn, we're going to have the archery technology, which means instead of being able to build a slinger, we're going to have to build an archer. And the archer is going to take much longer to build. But if we build the slinger, it's just a little bit of gold to upgrade it into an archer. So if we wait to finish this technology until after the slinger's done, then we'll be able to spend gold to upgrade it into an archer. So what you can do is you can come in here and switch off of this research and start researching something else. Now in this case, that would mean pumping some turns into something that we can't currently do. But let's just say we run up here and let's just spend 3 turns in sailing to finish that, and then we can switch out. And then later on we might be able to get the boost to that as well. Okay, so now we're doing sailing. We're going to build a slinger here. When this monument's done, we can pivot and perhaps build a warrior here, maybe 1 more warrior here, 3 warriors and an archer, assuming they don't build a whole bunch more units in the meantime, which I can't imagine will happen. We can start to march down this way to the south and potentially take out 1 or both of these cities, which will be very strong, and it will give us a big advantage in the game because we'll have a lot more land and a couple of free cities, and it won't have costed us necessarily that much because they don't have much of a military to beat. So that is step number 1 in pivoting towards the attack. So it's been 3 turns since we made our pivot. In Paris, we have completed a slinger, which is going to allow us to switch off of sailing and come back over to archery. And in 1 turn, we will be able to have the ability to upgrade this slinger into an archer. In the meantime, I am going to move him out in this direction so we can move him to here. We will have to be inside of our own borders in order to do the upgrade, but there's no point in us waiting to advance our unit forward right now. The other thing I wanted to take a look at is we did complete a civic this turn, which gives us the opportunity to change our policies. And in this case, we have an extremely valuable card that we can start to use here, which is very important in early combat. And really in a combat game at all, is the Agogi card, which is 50% production towards our melee units, anti-cavalry, and range units. So that includes our warriors, our slingers, our archers, stuff like that. So we're going to want to turn that card on, 100%. Because that's just going to make us get our military units that much faster, and we can get this war going quicker and give him less chance to react and build up his own army and disappoint our own efforts. Also, God King can now be removed because we no longer need the faith. We were getting the +1 faith in order to get to 25 faith in order to purchase our Pantheon. Now we'll talk about Pantheons in a little bit, but for now we know that we have enough, so we can turn that off and turn on urban planning, which is going to give us an additional production in each city, which is going to be very valuable towards producing these units as well. So, with those two cards on, we should be able to produce units much, much quicker. Confirm these policies, and you can see that we've gone in Calais from 5 turns down to 3 turns to build that, and in Paris, we're going to be able to get a warrior in 3 turns as well. So in 3 turns, we're going to have 2 more warriors along with an archer. And over here, since we turned off the advantage that you get from the card that we had on for +5 combat strength versus barbarians, we're going to want to wait to attack here. So we're going to actually stand still and fortify and let him heal up for a few turns. And what we may actually do is not even finish this attack. We may actually just send this guy south to attack down here and leave this barbarian camp for a bit. And the reason why we can leave that barbarian camp is that we know that their scout is stuck. He's surrounded by mountains, and this scout is stuck, so he's never going to be able to come and find our lands. So this is literally going to... This could sit here like this for the entire game and never produce more units. So we're perfectly fine with this being stuck like this. So in this case, we're going to want this guy to heal up as long as possible, like I said, and then we'll start to send him south with the rest of the units. So that'll give us 3 warriors, and we'll have an archer going as well, and hopefully that will be enough to at least start the attack, and then maybe we'll get a couple more units behind that to ensure that we finish the job. Okay, so war is imminent. We've built our units, and we have come down south here and begun to surround the Russian borders, and it's time to declare war. But before we do, I want to talk just a couple things about what I've done, where I position my guys, and why I've done it. So, first of all, they're outside the borders because when you go to declare a war, you have to be outside their borders or they'll kick you out. So if I had my units surrounding the city and then I said declare war, they would kick me out anyway, and often not to places you want to. Also, I've moved them. I've got basically a couple guys on the left here. I want these guys to come down this western flank here and come into the kind of lower part of the city and stand on these couple tiles in this area, because what I want is if for instance the Russian units tried to come up from the south to come and defend the city and help out, I'll have units in the way standing in cover, so they'll get combat bonuses for defending on these tiles because there's trees and hills and stuff. And so they'll come in, they'll try to hit me, and I'll be able to defend them from getting to the city while these guys do the heavy lifting. Also, I've located these guys over here to the right where there's a little bit more flat land so that I'll be able to start the attack as quickly as possible. So this guy will be able to walk across these 2 flat tiles on the first turn. This archer will move in here and be able to take a shot on that first turn because he's going to be stepping onto a flat piece of land and then shooting. And this guy is just going to be coming in late. Now, before we start the attack, I just want to show... The reason why these guys are late is because they were the last couple units that I built. And to be honest with you, I probably don't even actually need them to complete the takedown of Russia here, given their strength right now. But I would always suggest to you, if you're about to prepare for a war and you're going to get a battle going against somebody, it's always better to take an extra 2 or 3 turns building an extra couple units in order to make sure if you need them, you've got them. Versus if you don't take the time to build those and you get halfway through the war and you're going to be like, oh shoot, I could probably have used a couple extra units to finish this battle off, and you're not going to have them. And then you're going to have to, at that point, you might have to wait for them to be built 10 turns later and then have to make the trek down here. So at least they're in position to be support, perhaps for the second wave of attack down here to St. Petersburg, if you need it. So, very quickly, just to show you what we're going to do, we're actually going to have to declare the war first. So we'll click on this, and we're going to declare a surprise war. Now, unfortunately, we were a turn or 2 late. We just went to the classic era. So when you're in the initial era of the game, you will not have any war penalty, warmonger penalty. So because of this, we've got we have a moderate penalty for declaring a surprise war, but we're going to do it anyway because before long, he will be dead. So we'll click on here. Now we can come in and attack. We'll go like this. This guy's going to come in here and immediately be able to take a shot. And because the city is so weak, he'll actually take a fair amount of damage. Now it's going to heal up a little bit, but it's a shot nonetheless, right? So this guy's going to move to here and then eventually to here. This guy's going to swing around here and they'll get into position in the south. This guy's coming in down here and this guy's actually up here dealing with the scout at the moment. So we'll click next turn. And very quickly you'll see... Now, he's got a little bit of damage on him. He's 190 out of 200, so that initial archer attack did a little bit. Always hit with your ranged units first, because the more injured your opponent is, whether it's a city or another unit, the easier it will be for your melee units to hit them, because they'll have a bigger debuff for being injured. Okay, so always hit with your ranged units first on anything, and then take your shot with the melee unit. You can see there we had a very strong advantage there because the city is so weak. We'll continue to move to the south here. It certainly appears as though they have maybe one unit. And I think it's that scout. I don't know if they have any units. The one thing that might be a problem is there might be some barbarian horde coming down in here. Because it appears as though they've been losing units quite readily. So, hard to say for sure. This guy here, since we're in good shape, I'm going to take the time to go ahead and take a shot on this archer, or on this scout with my archer, in order to get the experience for myself and kill the unit before continuing south. And then, of course, we have our guy out here. He's just on the verge of... Oh, we've met somebody. Granada. All right. So, there you go. The attack has begun. We've done a lot of damage. And within a couple more turns, this city will be ours. And we'll be able to take all of our units and redirect our attention to the south to take St. Petersburg. So, with 25 faith in the bank, the time has come for us to choose our Pantheon. So let's take a look at what some of the options are and the best way to go about choosing which one. Depending on how quickly you get your faith, there will be different ones available. Some of them are heavily favored by the AI, so in many cases you might not get the one you want. Now, obviously you can see here there is a ton of Pantheons that you could go through, and it would take me an entire video to go through each one of these and say which ones are good, which ones are bad, when to use which ones, and so on. And we're not going to do that right now. That will be a video for the future. But what I do want to say is that the most important thing to consider when it comes to choosing a Pantheon is this Pantheon going to help me significantly right now? And that's not to say that you always want to go with just what's going to help you now, but you don't want to necessarily choose something that's going to take you 150 turns to benefit from. You want something that's going to be able to help you kind of fairly soon and, you know, throughout the game quite quickly. And so that means I would like to take a couple looks at some of the most obvious ones. So for instance, if you were to playing a game where you had lots of fishing boats, let's say you're playing on islands or something like that, and you're surrounded by sea resources and you're going to have tons of fishing boats, God of the Sea would be very advantageous for you, because that means every fishing boat that you have in your civilization is going to get +1 production forever. So if you're on an island and you've already got a couple of resources in your capital, you could choose this right now, and boom, just like that, all of those fishing boats are going to have production now and for the rest of the game. You don't have to wait at all. Same thing that goes for pastures. Let's say you've got a ton of pastures in your land, and you're thinking, that might be really nice, because if we do this now, we're immediately going to get the advantage of more culture. And we already talked about how important early culture is in this game. So that's another example of one that might be very advantageous. Now, there are other ones that might help you right away but aren't very strong. So for instance, an additional +1 food from camps, not very valuable. Even if you have lots of camps, +1 food from camps is simply just, that's out of the conversation to choose really ever. Stone circles, quarries are not going to be readily available enough to make it worth getting +2 faith for a couple. I mean, there might be a situation where you have tons of them and you're like, you know what, I do need some sort of faith. There's no other option. This is what I'm going with. But it's another example of one that's not going to help you a lot. Okay. There's oral traditions, which gives you extra culture as well. So if you see a lot of these things available in your lands, that might be another thing that could help you right away with early culture. And there are other things down here, like there's, I'm not sure if it's available still. I didn't look yet. God of the Forge. I don't see God of the Forge available right now. But that's an example. God of the Forge is the perfect one to get if you're going for a military victory, if you're going to be in combat. because you get God of the Forge, and it allows you to produce units at the very beginning of the game that much more quickly, with that 50% bonus. And then what will happen is you get those units built early, you start attacking, you get experience, and then as you get through the tech tree, you just promote them to higher level units. And so you do all your producing of units at the very beginning of the game, and then just level them up. So that's a big advantage and something to consider. One other one I'd like to talk about really quickly is Divine Spark, which gives you, we talked about Great People Points, and it gives you +1 Great People Points in your holy sites, your campuses, and your theater squares. So in this case, we've already got a campus. We plan on building plenty more. If you're going for a science game, you'd plan on building plenty more. If you were going to be building lots of theater squares, you could be able to get more points towards your great writers as well. And so if you're going for a science or culture victory, Divine Spark can be very advantageous when building lots of campuses and theater squares and getting more Great People Points produced from those districts. So that's another one that should be highly considered, and one that can help you right away because we've already got a campus where it's already going to start giving us bonus Great People Points, and that will just accumulate and escalate throughout the entire game. So there's a lot of different options here that you could potentially choose. As I take a look at our lands, I see a pasture here, a potential pasture here and here. That's 3. But then I'm like, okay, well, if we took this city, that's 4 or 5. There's another one over here is 6. So that's 6 pastures. But it's going to take us a while to get there. And then we'll be at 6 culture per turn. That's pretty good. It would not quite double our number right now. But when you think about it, that's like 3 monuments. It's good, but I would almost say that you'd almost want to have 10 or 12 or more of those at the very least. Or in some cases, be starved for culture. If you are in a lot of trouble, if you're really, really low on culture still, and you need a really big boost now in order to save your game, then maybe you go ahead and choose that one. For now, I'm going to go ahead and choose Divine Spark because it's probably the one that I would choose in this situation based on going for a regular victory type, such as science or culture. Okay, so it's turn 54, and we have finally unlocked the all-important political philosophy civic. And at turn 54, that's not too bad a speed. To give you an idea of the benchmarks you should be aiming for, if it takes you to turn 60 to unlock political philosophy, then that's getting a little bit towards the long end. That's kind of as long as you're going to want to take. If you're over 60, then you know you've had a rough game as far as getting the early culture and getting the boosts to speed up the tree as you take your journey towards political philosophy. Now, if you get it by turn 50, now you're starting to be pretty quick. By turn 50, that's really quite quick. So being somewhere in the middle at 54, we've done pretty well. We know there's a couple of the bonuses that we simply could not get because we just didn't find another continent and so on. And but we did well other than that. And also, we didn't have any free culture that kind of came about. We didn't have any tiles that gave us culture. We didn't get any first meets on a cultural city-state. Like, there wasn't anything that just fell our way as far as easy culture. The best we could really do is build our monuments as fast as possible, like we talked about, in order to get that culture going as quick as we could to get to political philosophy before too long. So let's take a quick look inside this little button here and decide on which government we're going to use and why you would want to use any of these governments. So the first one here at the top is oligarchy. Now, when you see this, all land melee units gain +4 combat strength. So that includes our warriors. So if you're in a war or going to a war, or for instance, we're planning a domination victory where you're going to always be in war, oligarchy is great. That +4 combat strength is very significant. So for any of your melee units, so you'd have your swordsman, or you're starting out with your warrior, then swordsman, musketman, all those guys are going to get really big combat boosts when they're attacking. So very good to have oligarchy in that situation. Not to mention the 20% bonus to your experience for combat units, so your guys will get promoted more quickly. Now, that's kind of war-only circumstances. Second, Classic Republic. There is all cities with a district receive a bonus amenity, and you get a bonus of Great People Points. So this is the one you want to choose most of the time if you're not going to war, because every city is going to get a district fairly soon once it's built. You're going to get your monument, but before long you're going to be like, okay, which district do I want to build first? So once you have a district, that bonus amenity is going to be very valuable. And we're going to talk about happiness and amenities in a little bit. But just so you realize, that's a whole amenity for every single city as soon as you have a district for free, just because you're in Classic Republic. And then the bonus towards Great People Points is great as well, because once you're building those districts, you're going to be earning Great People Points. And now you're getting a bonus on top of that, which is really, really nice. Okay. And then Autocracy is pretty much a very rare time you would ever choose this. If you were playing a game where you wanted to build a whole bunch of the wonders early in the game, you know, pyramids and Colosseum and a lot of the really good ones early on, bonus on wonder production of 10%. It's not great. 10% isn't fabulous. It makes this card, or makes this government quite weak to be doing this. But it is what it is. You know, if you wanted to use it in order to help you a little bit with your wonders, it might shave a turn or two off of the production of a wonder, then go right ahead. Now, real quickly, just for those of you who are super new, just so you understand, these cards right here, you see 4 of them across here. These indicate which policy slots you'll have to fill once you choose it. So the red is the military policy slots. The gold is the economic or commercial type policy slots. The green is the diplomatic, and then these are the wild cards. So you could use anything in here, including the purple guys. So those are the 3 choices. And so it tells you, okay, Autocracy, you have to have 2 military slots, and you get no diplomatic slot. So if you go for this one, not only is the bonus not particularly great, but oftentimes early in the game, if you're not in war, having to use 2 military slots early in the game is extremely, extremely poor. So for this case, we could go oligarchy to help us out in our war, but we definitely don't feel like we're going to have any trouble winning that war. And so I don't really feel like it really is necessary to go ahead and grab that. We could grab this, finish the war, and then switch to Classic Republic later. But for this purpose, I just want to take a quick look at choosing Classic Republic so we can show you some of the options. Having 2 economic policy slots is fantastic, okay? We can immediately go production in both cities. And because we're still producing a builder, we could keep that in there. Or if we wanted to buy a tile or 2, we could turn on the land surveyors and buy a couple tiles for cheaper. If we had our trade routes going, we could go with a couple extra gold. If we're going to choose to build a settler soon, which we do, then you can put this on. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to quickly grab this unit here, because our builder's complete in the one city. We're not going to do any more builders, so we don't really need the builder card on right now. But as soon as it becomes available in our capital, we're going to choose to build another settler. So turning on this 50% production towards settler card is very important. Now, it's going to be, this is the thing. When you're first starting out the game, understanding all of these cards and knowing when to put them in and remembering to put them all in at all the right times is not going to be perfect. More experience will bring it on as you go along. We already talked about the very important Agogi card. So you're going to want to put this card in anytime you're building units. If you have a lot of units and you have a military slot to fill, conscription's good because it saves you money. But some of these other ones aren't necessarily going to be all that valuable to you, depending on what you're doing. Some of the main cards in here, like for instance land surveyors, you're not going to want to have this card on all the time. But if you think to yourself, okay, there's like 3 or 4 tiles I'd love to buy, but I'd like to save some money, then you could turn this card on, buy the tiles, and then the next chance you get, you take it off. If you're going to be building some wonders, here's a nice card to help you boost towards that. But if you're not building wonders, there's no point in having it on. So it's all about managing, what do I plan to do for the next 5, 10, 15 turns, or even for the next 1 or 2 turns? What am I going to do, and what's going to help me the most? This +1 production in all cities early in the game is excellent, and then we're going to be building a settler, so that's what you want. Now, as far as diplomatic cards, if you're planning on sending envoys to people that you've never sent envoys to, then this card's very good because the first one acts as 2. That's a really big bonus you'll want to take advantage of if you're sending envoys to people. But since we're not at the moment, we're just going to take this extra bonus of influence points. And those influence points are up here, like this. So you'll accumulate influence points every single turn. And once you get to a certain number, you get a free envoy to send to city-states. We'll talk about city-states in a little bit and the envoys and how they work. But just know that earning influence points to gain more envoys is important. So turning that card on can be really good. And then we have a wildcard slot, so we can use anything we want. And in this case, what I think I'm going to do is I'm going to turn on the bonus towards purchasing tiles, because there's a couple tiles we might want to buy, and then we have some money here to spend. So I'm going to go ahead and turn that on so we can buy a tile or 2 in the meantime. Okay, so the next thing I'd like to talk to you guys about for just a little bit is trade routes and how you can use them, particularly early in the game, to benefit your civilization. So let's go ahead and click on our trade route here that we've just created in Paris and talk about our options. So the first thing you're going to want to think about is early in the game, typically the first half of the game or so, the best thing you can do with a trade route typically is going to be to send a trade route within your civilization. So send it domestically. Domestic trade routes are boosted by the number of districts that are in the destination city. So for instance, if I send a trade route from Paris to Calais, Calais has a city center and a city center only, and that is worth 1 food and 1 production. If I were to send it to Novgorod, who has a holy site that was built by the Russians, then that's a bonus of 1 food. Each specialty district has a different bonus. Sometimes they'll give you food, sometimes they'll give you production. If this was a commercial hub, the commercial hub would give bonus production, so instead it would be 1 food and 2 production. And the more districts you have, obviously, the more boost you're going to get. So often, the best thing that you can do with your trade routes early in the game is to send those trade routes to some of your other newer cities, whether you have a new city that's just been planted down or whatever, and then send that trade route back to your capital. Because generally speaking, your capital is going to mostly have more districts than other cities because it's been around the longest, it's got the most population typically, and it's had the most production and chance to actually get the districts built. Now in this case we only have 1 district built because it's still quite early in the game, but that's just a thought to keep in mind as you're doing it, is which district or which city has the most districts, and then that can be the destination for your trade routes from your newest cities. And something that I often do is if I know that I'm about to plop down a city somewhere brand new. For instance, let's say I had a settler right here and I was heading to this rice tile right here. I know that in 1 turn I'd be here, and then in another turn I would come to here and settle the city. So what I would often do if I had that trader available at that point is I would just skip those couple of turns, even though you don't always want to be giving up turns of a trade route because it's free production, food, whatever. You'll often want to just say, okay, it's worth waiting 2 turns to boost that city, because once you put that city down, it's brand new, it's got 1 population, it might only be working at 2 food, 1 production tile. It's going to take a long time to get anything done. But instead, you're going to put a trade route in there and send it back to, let's say, your capital. So let's think for a second. Let's say that your capital has a couple of districts in here and it's going to be worth 2 food and 2 production. Now you're doubling the food and production potentially that your city is producing. So it's going to finish the monument much quicker. It's going to be able to grow much quicker and use more tiles in a more expedient manner. And then the more tiles you're using, the faster you're using them. That just means you're snowballing more quickly, right? You get your population up, you're using more tiles quickly. That's extra production towards building even more stuff more quickly. And next thing you know, you're building your first district in that city when normally you'd still be finishing your monument. So that's an extremely important thing to keep in mind when talking about what to do with trade routes, is sending them to the newest cities possible and sending them towards the city with the most districts. Another thing to keep in mind, if you have the Rise and Fall DLC, or both of the DLCs, or expansions I should call them, if you have the government plaza built in that city, that's actually worth another whole food and production. So you could potentially, if early in the game, by turn 60 or so, turn 60, turn 70, wherever, quite early, when you're just getting your first trade routes online, you could potentially have 3 food and 3 production to every trade route going to your capital. So if you have 2 or 3 new cities you just put down and they all have a trade route going to the capital, that's all this bonus food and production you're producing for those cities to help them grow early. Now later in the game, one thing to keep in mind is that you'll more likely want to have those trade routes going to allies. So you're going to want to try and have allies that are neighbors close by the mid to late game, because there's governments and cards and stuff you can use within your government for policies that are going to give those huge bonuses. You're going to get lots of food, production, gold, culture, science, all kinds of extra big bonuses to your trade routes, but that's much later in the game. So early in the game, domestic trade routes. Later in the game, quite often, it's going to be international trade routes, particularly to your allies. Now, one other thing I do want to discuss is trade routes to city-states. You're not going to always want to send them to city-states. Generally speaking, it's not going to be advantageous as it is to get food and production. But occasionally you will see that a trade route will give you a free envoy by completing a quest for a particular city-state. In this case, Mitla will give us a free envoy if we send them a trade route. And at this point, because we don't have a city with a lot of districts that's going to really benefit another city from getting this trade route, it's very much worth getting 3 gold and a science in addition to that very valuable free envoy. Now, I'm going to talk about the city-states and the value of envoys in a little bit, but just know that free envoys are fantastic. And in this case, I am actually going to send it, in this rare case, to Mitla to get that free envoy. So we've actually, by completing that trade route, it was our first, we get a boost to currency. But the big thing is here, city-state quest completed, which grants us a free envoy. Just like that. All right. And that is extremely, extremely valuable to get those envoys. And we'll talk about that in a few moments. Okay, so let's talk about luxuries. And luxuries that equal amenities for your cities. But before I want to talk about that, I just want to take a quick moment to touch on what's happened here. So what I did was I had the card on that reduced the cost of purchasing tiles by 20%. And a few turns ago, when I had that on, I purchased this tile right here for 92 gold. And you might be thinking to yourself, do I really want to spend 92 gold to buy a tile? Well, let's think about it like this. The only way that you would actually be able to acquire this tile for free without having to purchase it would be to have your borders expand culturally for this city all the way around the second ring. So all of these extra tiles, 9 or 10 extra tiles that still need to be grown to before it can start growing to the third ring, in which case you might get lucky and grab this one right away. At which point you'd be able to work it. But that might take 60, 80, 100 or more turns to actually happen. Even if you built a theater square in this city, and even if you got a wonder in this city, the extra culture would still take many, many turns beyond waiting for this one. So, when you buy this tile, it's got 3 gold on it. So even within 30 turns, it will have paid for itself just by working it. 3 gold a turn, 30 turns, 90 gold, that pays for the tile and the money we spent on it. But when I work it, it's actually going to get more gold. So it's actually going to turn out to increase, or actually going to reduce the number of turns it takes to pay for itself. And then it's everything beyond those turns is just bonus gold you're getting into your civilization for free after having done it. So that's extremely valuable. And that's before we consider the fact that it's actually an amenity. There are many times when your city might be using tiles that aren't particularly good. For instance, let's say you had a population that made it so that it was working some tiles like this. Well, working a tile like this, instead of being able to work, let's say, a tile that has 2 food and 3 production, or 3 food and 2 production, is a really big difference. And having your city working that tile for an extra 30, 40, 50, 60 turns longer by purchasing it is absolutely worth it. So, particularly early in the game when you're trying to get cities going, purchasing tiles is a very good way to speed things up. So let's talk about amenities real quick as well. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to click on Calais here, and I want you to see that down here it says amenities, and it's got 0 beside it. All right, and then I'm going to go up here to Paris, and you're going to see that next to amenities it's got +1. So where are those numbers coming from, and what does it mean? So what you're going to do is you're going to go up here to list of reports, and you're going to go to city status. You're going to click on the city status, and it's going to bring up this thing right here. And under city status, you're going to see the amenities and the citizen happiness indicator here. Okay, so you've got 3-2 happy, 1-1 content, 2-0 happy. So what does that mean? Well, the number on the left is the number of amenities that city is currently got available to it, and the number on the right is how many amenities this city requires just to stay basically even. Okay, so the capital, because it's population 5, is requiring 2. Calais, once it goes to population 5, is going to require 2 as well. And then every time you go another population of 3 above that, so when you get to 8 to 11 and so on, you continue to need more amenities in that city to keep that city happy. So the higher population a city has, the more amenities it needs to maintain it. So what does it mean to be happy, content, or even ecstatic? Which means if you have 3 more amenities than the requirement, you're ecstatic. What exactly does that mean, and why are these amenities so important? Well, let's take a look at that. We'll come out of here, and we'll click on Paris. And you can see they're +1, all right? And when you come down here to the bonuses here down here, like the accumulation of yields, you're just going to see under culture, it says at the bottom, plus 5% from amenities. Okay? And then you're going to go over to production, plus 5% from amenities. Plus 5% from amenities. If you're ecstatic, that goes to 10%. So that means all of these yields in that city will be 10% higher. And that is a really big deal, particularly later in the game as you get higher and higher yields. You're getting bigger and bigger bonuses to your cities. So having amenities and keeping your people happy or even ecstatic gives you bonuses. Now, if your people are not happy or ecstatic and they're just even, then you get no bonuses like we're getting currently in Calais because they're at 0. If they're actually negative, then that's actually going to give you negative impact on your food, your production, and all that kind of stuff. And a way you can actually see this as well is if you click on the city and click on the toggle city details, you can come in here, and this is where you're going to see also your citizens and your growth in that. But down here, you'll see the amenities. So we're at 3 of a required 2, which makes us happy. It gives us 10% citizen growth and 5% to all non-food yields. So that's our production, our culture, our faith, gold, everything. An extra 5% for free. Now, this guy's getting 3 because he's got the amenities, the luxury resources. Everybody has 1 luxury resource right now because we've only improved 1, but we're going to improve a second one in a minute. And then amenities from civics. So that's from the +1. That means from our government, we're getting +1 amenity for any city that has a district. This city actually does have a district, so that's giving it an amenity because of our government that we've chosen. Okay? And then finally, the amenities from entertainment, that's actually because of the palace. The capital gets a bonus amenity from the palace for entertainment. So that gives us a total of 3, meaning it's actually happy. So real quickly, I'm going to just click on this button right here, and this is going to give us an additional gold, and it's going to give us access to that extra luxury. In addition, a little bit later on with the higher technology, that's actually going to go to 5 gold. But let's not worry about that. That 4 gold, that means in about 20 turns, that tile will have paid for itself, and then it will be just giving us 4 gold for free forever. Okay, let's take a look. Paris. Boom. Now they're +2. If they go to +3, they're going to be ecstatic. But the big difference that has been made is Calais. In Calais, they're +1 amenity when they were 0 now. So when you go in here, they're getting a bonus from amenities of +5%. Now, it doesn't look like a lot right now, but 10, 15, 20, 30 turns from now, when this production's 20 or 25, then it's going to be a bonus of 2 or 3 or 4 extra production, and a bonus of an extra 2 or 3 science, a bonus of 2 or 3 extra culture. When you have 8 or 10 or 12 cities and all of them are happy or ecstatic, that's all kinds of extra bonus science and culture and gold and faith that you're going to get in your cities because you've kept your amenities up. All right, one final thing that I would like to talk to you guys about before we call this the end of our more basics tutorial is the city-states. I promised you we'd talk about it before the end of the video, and here we go. So really quickly, I don't want to get into too much depth about some of the different things that can happen with these guys, but essentially, the more envoys you have with the city-state, the better the bonuses. At stage 1, 2, and 3, you need 3 envoys for this stage and 6 for this one. And the more you have, the better. So the first stage for each of these is more culture, more science, more production when producing units, more gold, all in the capital. These all affect the capital. Beyond that, the bonuses all relate specifically to the individual districts that correspond. So the theater square for culture, the campus for science, etc. And now in the base game, once you have that district built in any city, then you get the bonus immediately. +2, and then +2 again if you have 6 envoys. But if you have any of the expansions, then you are actually required to have the stage 1 and stage 2 building complete. So that means the amphitheater and the museum, or the library and the campus, or etc. So the market and the bank for a commercial hub, etc. So in order to get the extra bonuses at stage 2 and 3, you need the stage 1 and 2 buildings complete if you got the expansions. Otherwise, you actually just get them for free. So that is a very big thing. Before we even talk about being suzerain, those bonuses are very good, particularly if you're going for a science victory or culture victory. Having all that extra culture and science by just having all your districts built and getting those bonuses is incredibly big. That's a lot of extra bonus science and culture that give you value for those cities. Now, as far as suzerains are concerned, become suzerain of a city-state, you have to have at least 3 envoys within a city-state, and you must have the most envoys of any other civilization. So in this case, you can see Teddy Roosevelt has 3 in Mohenjo-Daro. You would need 4 to take over as suzerain over top of Teddy Roosevelt. So what I'm going to do in order to display this is that in Mitla, we actually have 2, and I can actually give envoys to people. So I can actually click on this and confirm placement, and we are now suzerain of Mitla, just like that. And in addition to sharing the map that they have, so you can see the map that they've exposed, everything that they've seen, you've now seen, we also share vision with them. So if their units move around, we can see what their units see, which is really valuable. And then in addition to all this, each individual city-state has their own unique bonus that they give you once you're suzerain of them. So in the case of Mitla, you can see here that you get city growth rate of 15% higher in cities with a campus district. So any city that's got a campus district, in this case Paris and Calais now have campuses, their growth is going to get a 15% bonus. That's pretty good early in a game in order to get the population up. Overall, it's not a fantastic bonus. It doesn't actually give you bonuses to your science like some of the other science city-states do, but it's a solid one. Some of the city-states are going to have really good bonuses. Some of them have terrible bonuses. Some of them have bonuses that are only good in very unique situations. But I guess in a way that's the way it should be, right? They shouldn't all be really, really good. Some of them should be good and bad, and you can fight for the good ones that you like. Now, I'm not going to go through all of the bonuses for all of these because it would take quite a while. And, of course, there are many, many other city-states that are available to be in your game. They're not all going to be in the same game. So you're only going to see a few of them pop up in any one game that you're playing. But I did want to point out my very favorite city-state, which happens to be in this game, and that is Antananarivo. And it's not just because it has a fantastic name. Their bonus is plus 2% culture for each great person that you have earned in the entire game, up to a total of 30%. And that is pretty sweet because as you get going through a game, especially if you're building all consistent districts, you're building your commercial hubs, your theater squares, your campuses, you'll be earning a lot of great people. And by the mid to end of that game, you'll have earned easily 15 or more, giving you that max bonus. And as you get later in the game, like right now we only have 10 culture, but you're going to get up to 100 culture, up to 200 culture, 400 culture. At the end of some of my games, I have 1,000 or more culture. So that means you're going to be getting a bonus of potentially 100, 200, even 300 more culture in your civilization from this one city-state because of that massive bonus. These guys, when you see them in a game, is absolutely amazing, and you want to focus on becoming their suzerain and staying their suzerain, particularly late into the game when you have a lot of bonuses, because it is absolutely fantastic. And that is the general breakdown of city-states. All right, ladies and gentlemen, you thought I was going to leave you hanging on this war with Russia, but I wouldn't do that to you. We are ready to take this city, finally. And it has been quite the rough slog. And this is why I mentioned earlier, you always produce a couple more units than you think you're going to need because you never know what's going to happen. And when we came down here to take St. Petersburg, there were barbarians everywhere. I mean, there were so many of them. I think we killed at least 6 or 7 barbarian warriors and a couple of barbarian slingers. We actually lost a warrior and an archer in the process. I actually purchased an extra archer in Novgorod to bring down here to help out with the finishing touches, because it has been rough getting all those guys beat. Because in addition to all that, St. Petersburg has been spitting out archers like every third turn, and holy cow, it's just like, in addition to trying to kill the barbarians, you got St. Petersburg taking shots at us from the back lines with their archers and killing our units, and it's just been rough. But it's finally done. We're ready to go. Let's just do those final few turns for you to wrap it up. Now, we're just going to bring our archers in. Now, like I said, you always want to take your first shots with your archers to weaken whatever your opponent is, whether it's a city or a unit. And then whenever I have an option for who to choose to hit with, I always pick the guy with the most health first because he's going to have the biggest advantage. That's 18 to 8. This is 17 to 8. And this is 15 to 8. So you always want to start with the biggest advantage first. You're going to get the biggest hit. And now this guy is 17 to 6. So it makes it that much easier for the lower energy guy to kill him. And this might actually finish it. Ooh, it's close. He's got nothing left. 1 out of 200. Literally 1 hit point. And that is the ball game. Peter, I'm sorry, buddy, but you're out of here. You are defeated. There you go. So that's it. We have finished this tutorial. I hope you've really enjoyed it, guys. It has been a lot of fun to make. The first tutorial got a lot of positive feedback really quickly, and I was super excited to jump in and get this one going as well. I hope it's been extremely helpful as well. And that's it. I really appreciate it. Do not forget, if you've enjoyed this video, please hit that like button. Make sure lots of other people on YouTube can find it. It makes a big, big difference. It really does. Also, subscribe to the channel because we have lots of tutorials on the way. Lots of things planned. Lots more stuff to learn. So be sure to not miss any of that. And, of course, leave some comments down below. Don't be afraid to drop your questions in there or comments. Love to hear from you guys. All right, that's it. Until next time, take care of yourselves, folks. And bye-bye.